Welcome, students. Today, we are honored to have with us Barry Schwartz. And Barry is somebody whose blog you may read in the next couple of weeks. Barry writes about search engines, search engine marketing, search engine optimization. He is the founder and current editor of Search Engine Roundtable. He is the CEO and president of Rusty Brick, which is a New York-based development company, and the news editor or a news editor at Search Engine Land. He moderates online and offline panels on search engines. He hosts, he's a consultant. He hosts major conferences on search engines. Barry, what did I miss?
I'm passionate about search. I've been covering search for a long, long time, and I'm watching a drone fly outside my window. I'm not sure whose drone that is, but yeah,
Well,
so yeah, I like search.
I like it too. But I want to know from an expert and also from somebody who's on the other side. We talk a lot about how we help people search the end user. You know, the other side of the industry that I have very little knowledge of. And I want to know what you think is something is what we can expect as users. What's going on in the industry in general, and then we'll talk about some of the specific search engines and search tools that we're using. Can you just kind of give us a sense of where we're going in general across the world of search?
I mean, the biggest trend right now is this whole AI in search. We have a lot of discussion you saw with Chat GPT from OpenAI. Big has gone all in with both in terms of rebuilding their interfaces for Bing.com to incorporate Big Chat, both in Bing.com and Big Chat's interface. They invested billions and billions of dollars in OpenAI. Google announced Bard, which is not out currently, but it's being tested within Google. You have DuckDuckGo, you have Baidu, you have all the search engines pretty much saying we're going in on this AI experience within search and outside of search. So there's the ability to ask long-winded questions and get a chatbot experience response. And then there's also this experience of integrating that somehow into the actual search result or having search results integrated into the chat experience. And it's very, very fascinating to see how search engines right now, watching Big constantly tweak all these things over the course of the past few weeks, has been very, very interesting in general. And I think it's going to be a very, very interesting year for search in general.
Yeah, it's funny. I've been like every time I take a look at something, it seems like it's changed. The interface keeps changing. With Bing Chat, I noticed the card or the box thing that came out. Is that very much like the old knowledge graph? That used a little bit of AI too, didn't it?
Yeah, so the knowledge graph uses some AI, also Google's featured snippets, where it gives you kind of an answer at the top. It's like three sentences, uses AI or machine learning to generate those. But those are generally pulled from one source. So Google sometimes provided multiple featured snippets, go sort of big, but each snippet box had its own, this is where it's from, and this is a summary of what it says, and it basically quoted the text from the website. This AI is yes sourcing information from across the web, especially with Bing, because Bing is providing like a Chat GPT 3.5 version where the content is literally updated in real time, whereas Chat GPT was basically from 2021 and earlier. This goes like up to the minute with Bing because they have fresh content. So what you see them doing is not just provide, answers, but they provide a big paragraph or multiple paragraphs of answers to the question with multiple citations, like one of your students might write an answer to an essay and say, this is the essay and here's the citations. Sometimes he gets it wrong, just like your students maybe get it wrong. I'm sure most of your students get it right away. But sometimes it gets it wrong and it will be sourcing something and then say, hey, and then you read the actual source by clicking on the link and it won't be that the information won't be there, it'll be incorrect. So it's still very, very early on, but it's pretty cool to see how fast this stuff is evolving and to see, it basically creates its own answer based off what it's finding from the web and it's with citations, but it's not directly quoting the information per se. Whereas feature snippets and the knowledge panel would actually provide a pretty much a copy of what the website was saying.
So in terms of search, I want to go more deeply into Bing specifically in a minute, but in terms of search, um, the better your, we've talked a lot about search strategy, but in this case, we're also talking about prompt engineering. And does does that make us think about it in a different way about what we enter in a search box?
So that's the thing. I think somebody asked Microsoft, are people using the big chat box, which is actually a bigger box? So they went from a very thin box to a larger box. And
Yeah.
people ask you, are they doing more searches or more chats? And I think the answer was more searches. So like searches are like you type in two, three, four keyword phrases.
Right.
Big chats are more like you might not like I'm talking to you. It might be a long-winded question, and that's where voice search comes into play a lot. Where you might go ahead and ask a long question, and the easiest way to do that is over voice search. So when Bing launched and added those features to Bing's mobile app, that was an exciting time because I'm like, hey, now people could use the voice because it's more native, it's more natural to do a voice search on your phone than it is on your desktop. So I think that like how do you define what a chat is versus a chat query versus what a search query is? I think it's mostly by length. But it's hard to chat is more like a back and forth also, where you get
Right.
something, you then ask the next question and so forth. Whereas search is like, I'm going to start a new search right away, and it doesn't really
Right.
always sync up.
So with a chat, you're editing the conversation. You're saying, well, I'd really like this in this format, or I'd like this in another style, or I'd like you to add an annotation to the existing list that you created. So you're refining it, and the conversation is there. You're not starting from scratch each time, I guess.
Right, but there is a concept of previous query and Google using previous query based on I don't know if you search for football, then you search for Jaguars. After that, it might show you not the animal but the football team. So there's that concept as well. So there's a
Got
lot of overlap, which is why this concept of AI in search goes so well together. Although Google just announced like a week ago that to their employees at like an all hands meeting that search and BART are different. They are, but they basically
Are
don't
they going to
consider.
keep them separate? I thought Bard
Well,
was
technically, the technology BARD is separate from search,
right.
although they overlap, meaning it pulls content from the Google index, the search results. I mean, the pages on the internet. And I assume they're going to. It just makes sense to bake in AI and Bard into search in some way, and how that works. You can see it on Bing right now how it works. There's like this multi like things going back and forth. But again, Chat GPT, which is what Bing uses, is separate from search. It's how Bing is utilizing their index to provide Chat GPT answers based on the search index. So they work very well together, and it's going to go well beyond search. But right now, the most logical place to use Bard or Chat GPT or other AI is within search.
Now we started talking about Bing and how it's changing. And I feel like a lot of folks were really Google devotees. Do you think you're going to see migration of users from Google to Bing because of the inclusion of AI?
That's a good question. I get asked that all the time. I don't know. I'm kind of flip-flopping between the answers. Right now, I think Bing announced some data that they have 45 million total chats, and they are up to 100 million daily active users, which is a big number, but it's still a tiny number in general. I did look at recent market share, I don't know, a few weeks after Bing launched this Bing chat feature, and there was no decline from Google. There was no real increase, at least noticeable. Um, and Google's going to come out with their Bard features soon. So Google has the advantage. I mean, Bing is currently one step ahead, but Google has this technology. They've been using AI. They showed examples of this many years ago at Google I/O. They've been working on it since I think 2010. They just have to be more cautious about how they use it because they're the big company now. They're not a startup that could mess up. So I think whatever Google comes out with, I think they'll catch up to Bing in terms of the technology and the user interfaces and how it works very quickly, and probably surpass it because Google is just faster at indexing. They have more recent content. They have more searches and more queries that they can use to improve the AI and improve the machine learning. So they're going to be a step ahead, even though they're a step behind right now. So I don't know. I mean, I'm not sure. I know I initially thought when Microsoft first launched their search engine, I think it was called Live Search back in, I don't know, 2005 or something like that, that Microsoft would see that search engine explode and take over Google because then Microsoft owned the operating system. They owned Internet Explorer, the browser. There was no mobile phone back then, no smartphone back then. They had everything. They had control of everything. And then slowly people just started switching to Google over default. And then slowly Google built out Android. They bought Android. They built out Chrome, Chrome OS, Chromebooks. So now they're kind of like, and they pay Apple $1 billion or billions of dollars to be on the iPhone and on Safari. So I think they have that locked up right now. And Microsoft's all right, trying to push their Edge browser stuff right now with new features. So it will be interesting to see if they can gain market share. But again, I think if Bard large is sued, I think people will quickly move from. Sadly, I think people will quickly move from Bing to back to Google, which is kind of sad. But I want to see more competition. What's going to be interesting is if Apple Siri could integrate these types of technologies, because they own Apple. Like it's on iPhones are everywhere, MacBooks are everywhere. So that would be interesting as well to see between Microsoft owning the PC market, Apple owning a lot of the PC market and the mobile market as well. Google kind of owns the Android market. So it would be interesting to see how much of a search, how market share would change across search if Apple, Microsoft, and Google all compete at the same thing. But right now, it's all Google.
Okay, speaking of Google and Bing, and I want to move to some of the other search tools in a minute, but what are some things that you would imagine that my students haven't discovered? We've dug in, we've talked to Dan Russell. We've been looking at Ngram Viewer. We've been looking at Talk to Books. We've been looking at a whole bunch of features. But do you have any favorite things that you think are likely undiscovered?
Undiscovered. So one of my things is finding new features that Google's constantly testing. I write about Google search tests and big search tests all the time. They're just constantly exploring different things and testing different things. So there's tons of stuff that they're constantly doing. Um, I mean, if you're not using their mobile apps, I mean, they have like you can take pictures of stuff. The Google Lens features are absolutely mind blowing, and nobody knows to use it. Like if you're like my wife was like looking to buy something, I'm like she's like I don't know what this is. I'm like you got your phone and just take a picture of it with the Google app, and then she was mind blown. And I mean, so that's Google Lens.
We had an activity. We had an activity on that last week, and my students were just freaked out by it.
It's absolutely amazing.
Yeah.
And people don't talk about it enough. People don't use it enough. It's game changer. Also, I mean, some cool things is this Google Explore feature, which it's hard to find. You have to basically do a search on your mobile phone, scroll, and keep scrolling, and then you might get this like kind of portal look, and like it gives you like these cards and this information. So if you're looking for a topic and you want to like have to write about a certain topic, you might get more ideas about that topic by just scrolling through all the search results and finally getting to this Google Explorer feature. I don't know if it's fully live; it's kind of like partially live.
Yeah, I've seen it pop up, but it also pops up in the whole ecosystem of Google products, right? So you can find it in your docs and slides and other places as well as search.
So that's slightly different, yeah. So yeah, you can find it there, but how it's baked into Google search is pretty interesting. As well as you can on Android phones, you can supposedly swipe to the right and it'll explore what you're looking at right now.
I'm going to explore that right after we finish.
Yeah, so there's lots of little tricks how to activate that, and that's constantly checked. By the time this interview comes out, it might be totally different. So who knows? Google Trends is great. I mean, it's a great place to like find out what's trending. And they have
just changed their interface, didn't they?
They just changed their interface just recently. It's been years since they did that, and you can actually see what's trending compared to previous times based on location or dates. It's really great. And then I personally like this tool called Wolfram Alpha.
I love that.
You've heard of it?
Yeah, I love it.
So it's great. I mean, the data it provides is wonderful. So there's lots of cool tools out there that I use.
It's something that librarians can use as a reference tool and to create on the fly comparisons, and and do anything computational. And it's miraculous. It's a graphing calculator. It just does everything. So it really surprises me too how few people use it. So, okay, but now let's talk about some of the other search tools. I don't know if this is an area in which you explore, but in terms of academic search, there's a bunch of AI tools that are coming out. Google Talk to Books was an early exploration. There's you and there's something called Implicit. I have a list of these I've just been starting to explore. I don't know if you've been looking at those at all.
Just the news releases, I really try to focus it on. There's only
Gotcha.
so much you could do. So I cover Google in such detail. So I really focus on those primarily.
That's fine. But in terms of the other searches, and some of them probably use Bing's and Google's indexes. But what other ones should you mentioned Wolfram Alpha, computational search. What other ones should we be aware of? I know some focus on on maintaining privacy. Others look at social search. Others are really good on mobile. What are some of the areas we should be looking at as we think about alternate search engines or search tools?
Yeah, I mean, it's funny because the DuckDuckGo brand was about privacy, and then they had their whole privacy issue, and their market share dropped after that. There's so many of them, and they're coming and going. There's been Google killers since Google launched. I don't know. I'm not sure. It depends on what you are doing, but the specific ones are better than other ones. I mean, the main thing is how to search and how to use those technologies to search. Generally, Google's just a step ahead because, again, they just have a fresher, more up-to-date index than even Bing. And Bing, a lot of sites, believe this or not, block Bing from crawling their websites because they're not Google. Like,
Really?
nobody would block Google from crawling their website because they want the traffic. But Bing sends such a small percentage of traffic to your website. If your website is getting hammered and it's not loading, and you see there's a lot of Big bot, their spider crawler activity from Bing on your site, you might go ahead and block them. And that's been an issue for Bing for a while, where some sites, even large ones, are blocking Bing because they just don't want the crawlers on their websites messing up with their servers. Now that's why Bing's pushing what they call Index Now, which is a way to push content to Bing and to other search engines, as opposed to Bing having to crawl your website. But I think the issue again is that almost everybody allows Google to crawl their website, and other sites, other browsers, other search engines like DuckDuckGo, even Bing, and the smaller ones, people are just blocking them because the crawler activity they don't want on their website. And you're not going to get a comprehensive, fresh, and up to date response to your query always if websites are blocking those search engines.
Okay. So is search different on mobile, and what is the impact of mobile on search? Or are search engines looking to? I recognize that a search engine and the app will look different from a browser-based search, but are there any other differences my students should know about?
I mean, behind the scenes, historically, searching on mobile would generate more of a mobile more geo specific response. Obviously, if you search for a barber shop on desktop or mobile, you'll get a local response. But some queries that you might search on desktop would generate less of a local response than if you search that same query on mobile. I think the bridge between the desktop and mobile search experiences have been converging with each other, and everything is more mobile centric these days anyway. It's like a mobile first atmosphere. Just recently, Google like launched in October a new search interface for mobile where it has like the site name and the fave icons and snippets, and a new sponsor label. They actually went ahead and just brought that over to desktop search now. So it's like Google's doing everything in a mobile first atmosphere versus a desktop first. So there is very little difference these days between mobile and desktop, although the mobile phone is able to do a lot more for you in terms of knowing your exact location versus your desktop might not know your exact location. Be able to use your camera on your phone with Google Lens that you can't do necessarily with a desktop, although a lot of laptops have cameras. And now recently, actually, Google, past several months, added the Google Lens button to desktop. It was only available on mobile for years before that, but now it just came to desktop. So there is this convergence of desktop and mobile being more alike these days. Um, but yeah, I mean, generally, you'll probably see a very similar response, but historically, there used to be a much big difference response between the two.
All right, great. So let's sort of summarize or close up with what you wish the general public, including my librarian students and the people they serve, knew about search.
Oh, that's a big one. There's so many things that people just don't understand. Search isn't really necessarily biased. Search doesn't have an opinion. There's like search is not like right wing or left wing, conservative or liberal or Fox News or see it. It's funny. I get like some people in my community might be very conservative and like leaning, and they always complain about how Google shows more left leaning stuff, and I have the same people on the left side saying the total opposite to me. I'm like, that's because you see what's in your bubble, and it's just people just don't understand that how search works is based on often what they're looking for and how they how they query the information. So their query might be more slanted to what they're looking for. That's one thing. Like the search engine is really just they index everything they can and they will return everything they can that they think is quality. And they're not the arbitrators of truth. They don't know what truth is. They just try to provide quality information based on their algorithms. And it's not just like if somebody from the government's paying them more or giving them more of a tax break, it doesn't work like that.
So can you counter personalization?
So personalization is very, very light signal in Google search. They barely use it, but your query might define what information gets there. If you say, why didn't the Holocaust happen? Google might show results from theories about why the Holocaust may not have happened, according to these, conspiracy theorists. But if you search, did the Holocaust happen? Google is going to say, yes, of course it happened, and provide information. So it depends on how you word your query also. So keep that in mind. Two is search is not immediate, meaning something might happen. We might not know what happened. Like I guess I don't know if a plane gets. There's I think a Netflix thing about the plane that got lost, the Malaysia plane that got lost, and there was so much misinformation about it because nobody knew where it was. Or even with COVID, as COVID was changing, it was so like, don't touch, this, or make sure to not breathe and go outside or go. There was so much information that things were changing constantly, and Google has to quickly adapt to that based on the information that's being published to the web. So Google's index works fast, they crawl fast, but they have to figure out what is the truth based on what the consensus of the web is out there. So that takes time. Yeah, I mean, there's lots of things that might be considered bugs, and people like say, "Oh, Google hates this or hates that." There's no such thing as that. It's an algorithm, and to get upset over, I'm trying to think of a specific example. It happens to every other person. It happened before. I know it happened with Michelle Obama, where image search you search for Michelle Obama, and image search would show pictures of monkeys because somebody spammed Google with her name to be a racist and to do a horrible thing. And Google fixed it, and it went on. And every religion, every sect, every culture has this issue when it comes to Google search because there's some bad actors out there that will try to manipulate Google, and Google will then have to fix it. It's not like Google did it. It's there's bad people on the web that try to manipulate Google, and then Google has to fix it. It's like a cat and mouse game between spammers. So I think a lot of people misunderstand that even though Google gives a response, it's not what Google thinks or what Google believes, or Google has some type of agenda against anybody or any person. I think that's another thing that I think people mess up on a lot.
So when we're looking at autocomplete, like why are Jewish people, and then you see the stuff coming in, how is that generated?
That's based off of a bunch of things. It changed a lot over the years. That was used to be easily spammable, easily. So those used to be based off of just what people were searching, and that was it. So then people would hire people overseas to just like whatever these platforms were, and just do searches to kind of manipulate those. So Google has ways to detect if it's being manipulated, and Google has ways to detect, does the query return what people are actually searching for in the real world, and is the content there that represents it, and so forth. So I don't know the exact algorithms that they're using today, but there are ways that they could go ahead and prevent this from happening in the future. I don't know if you remember the miserable failure Google bomb, where You search for visible failure, and the White House came up under George Bush. So there's lots of these things that have come over the years, and Google keeps building these tools to kind of, or these spam detection tools to kind of combat these. And there's always something new every day, so which is fascinating, fun for me to cover, and it's interesting. I remember once a girlfriend got in a fight with their boyfriend. They were tiny teenagers, and the girlfriend photo bombed or Google Images with the picture of the boyfriend with a bunch of memes and stuff. And the boyfriend was devastated. I'm like, oh, this is amazing. Somebody in high school was using Google to get back at this is like probably like 15 years ago. Somebody was using Google to get back at their boyfriend, and it got all over TMZ and all these major news channels. And the boyfriend was devastated. He's all, why am I on TMZ? Why am I on CNBN or with CNN or whatever? And I didn't realize. I thought it was just amazing that somebody's using search back then to get back at the high school feud or something like that. So I just find it very, very fascinating to see how people are using search, how people are trying to manipulate the search, and so forth. That's never going to change. So it's a very fascinating field.
All right, final question. How does Barry Schwartz keep up?
I don't sleep. No, I'm joking. I keep track of people. Thankfully, now I have a lot of followers. People send me stuff on Twitter mostly and social media, but I also track tons and tons of stuff that Google's doing myself. I have hundreds of bookmarks, hundreds of tools that I use to track stuff. So I'm constantly tracking what people are saying and what Google's doing, what Bing's doing. Even though they're not, I can track a lot of stuff. So it's a lot of tools I use in the back end.
So to follow you, where would we go? Would we be on Twitter?
Yeah, mostly I'm very active on Twitter. My Twitter handle is Rusty Brick, but I also on all the social networks, including Mastodon. So wherever you find Barry Schwartz, just do a search for Barry Schwartz, I guess SEO or technologist, and you'll probably find me.
Excellent. Barry, thank you for your time. I'm going to stop recording, and I'm hoping my students will follow and connect with you.